What's up, guys, and welcome to GameScript. Looking at the Seattle Seahawks versus the Green Bay Packers. It's a high total game with two teams playing for the playoffs, basically, and playing for their playoff lives. Seattle more so than Green Bay. Green Bay has a high probability of making it into the playoffs, so it's a game a little bit more important for Seattle, and I'll get into it right after this. What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of GameScript. I'm Simon Edwards, aka Pumacom, and I'm going to be breaking down the DraftKings Showdown slate for the Seattle Seahawks versus the Green Bay Packers. We're looking at a total of 46.5 points, with Green Bay as 2.5-point favorites in this one. And they're playing in Seattle, so we got a situation where we have some home dogs in this one. So interesting game, interesting setup. Both defenses on these teams have been playing better recently. Both the season pretty slow. And it's a game with heavy playoff implications because the Green Bay Packers have the better record right now than the Seahawks. The Green Bay Packers have about a 90% chance of making the playoffs. If we take a look at the we'll take a look at the playoff indicator here. If we scroll down, we see the Seahawks have currently a 54% chance of making the playoffs despite being first place in the NFC West. We've seen the Rams surging, but the NFC West is probably the weakest division in the league, but more competitive as far as the teams in the league against each other. It's a competitive division with a lot of those teams within the division still in contention for first place. And Seahawks have a 54% chance of making the playoffs. If they win this, it'll bump it up to 72. This is according to the NFL.com playoff standings. If they lose, it'll bump it down to about 41%. As far as the Packers, they're currently standing at 96% chance of making the playoffs. If they win, that'll bump it to just under 99% or just under 100%. If they lose, then their playoff probability drops to only 93%. So it's still like a decent chance of making the playoffs. Obviously, 93% is significant. The Packers have a 9-4 record. The Seahawks have an 8-5 record. And like I said, like the Rams won the other day. So if the Seahawks lose this one, I'm not sure if that knocks them into second place in the division, but that'll be good for the Rams and their playoff chances. If we look at the Rams are currently on the bubble, 8-6. They have a 51% chance of making the playoffs. If the Seahawks lose this one, that'll be good for the Rams. And on top of that, the Rams would make a very good team for us to target in playoff best ball. And it's going to, a lot of that's going to come down to the results of this game, Seattle and Green Bay. So before I dig into the DraftKings situation here, make sure to hit that like button. I'm looking for 30 likes to put out a shorter video later on. I've been putting out these underdog pick'em videos. DraftKings, I was trying to get them on as a affiliate, but I was not able to do that yet. So Underdog's been a great affiliate relationship, and I like doing these pick'em contests. And I got one up currently where it's the main slate, and you can potentially win 93 times your money. A lot of that hinges on Njigba Okonkwo, the situation with the game against the Bengals. The Bengals have given up, I think, about 8 touchdowns to tight ends in the last 9 games or something like that. And Njigba Okonkwo just has a decent matchup in general against those Bengals. And if he ends up scoring a touchdown, that'll be huge for any of these pick'em contests that you might want to put them in. So just keep that in mind. And let's move on into this showdown slate. Also, subscribe to the channel. I'm looking for 1,400 subscribers. I'm about 80 short of that right now, so I need about 80 subscribers to hit that mark. So I appreciate you guys' help with that. Trying to get as close to that as possible by the end of week 15. So if you guys are watching and you haven't hit subscribe yet, please do that. And let's break this down. So both defenses have been playing well. We were dealing with a lot of injuries to the Seattle defense and offense, honestly. Like their offensive line was in shambles. The defense was struggling with injuries. And now it seems like both these teams are going to be the healthiest that we've seen them pretty much all season. Let's switch over to the injury tab here. We're looking at a Green Bay team missing Jair Alexander still. They're also missing the nickelback Javon Bullard. So that is going to be another ding to that banged up secondary of the Packers, which will be good for the Seattle passing game. But you can see here Jair Alexander has missed the last few games. Green Bay's still been playing well. Their defense has still been playing well without him, but it doesn't help to have him missing. So that's not good for the Green Bay defense. If we're looking at the Seattle defense, we see that Trey Brown is out. A lot of depth issues at that right cornerback position. I'm sure one of these other guys will fill that in. But Jarek Reed is on IR on top of that. And, they're having some more depth issues on their defense and their secondary. So looking better though than they were looking earlier in the season. We were seeing, I think it was Witherspoon or Woolen, or both those guys were dealing with injuries earlier. Artie Burns, he's doubtful tonight too, by the way. Biggest injury concern is on the offense with the Seahawks, and that's Kenneth Walker. He's doubtful for tonight's game. We got some depth issues on the offensive line. We got a lot of these guys on IR for Seattle. That's a good thing for Green Bay's defense. Kenneth Walker, I think, as far as skill position players, he's the biggest concern for tonight. He's doubtful. He's not officially out yet, but you're going to want to keep track and see what his status is. Zach Charbonnet will be filling in. He did a great job the other day. He scored like 38 DraftKings points, something like that last week. But if he is in, that's going to be great for Zach Charbonnet in Showdown tonight. On top of that, Charbonnet runs a lot more routes than Kenneth Walker, so that'll set up Charbonnet to be playing a decent role in the passing game. So let's go back over to the player pool here. We'll build our player pool for DraftKings Showdown lineups. We got Josh Jacobs in a good matchup. The Seahawks are giving up 23.2 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. That's right on the edge of being one of the best matchups in the league, one of the top 10 matchups. Green Bay's giving up 23.6 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. A little bit better for Charbonnet if he's the one who's playing. But Josh Jacobs has been on a tear. He had 4 touchdowns against Miami a couple weeks ago. 4 targets. 3 touchdowns versus Detroit last week. 1 touchdown versus Miami. 3 touchdowns versus San Francisco. And 1 versus Chicago. So we've seen a lot of touchdowns for Josh Jacobs recently. So I think he could potentially be a touchdown pick for us on Underdogs Pick'em. And he also makes a decent captain option with the matchup that he has against Seattle this week. Jordan Love has been struggling a little bit more this year than he had been last year. He still had some upside games. If you remember, in week 1, he got hurt versus Philly, and he missed a few games. He came back in week 4 and threw 34 DraftKings points. But he's basically only had a couple good weeks since then, and they need to get him going. But this might not be the matchup to do it in, with the Seattle defense playing better than they have. thing with this game, the 46.5-point total, I think this is going to go under that total. I've been a lot better recently, at least this season. It's been a weird season. I've talked to some other analysts, and as far as picking the actual player picks, it's kind of like the guys that have been sending the highest signals for the best matchups and stuff like that have not been hitting like they have in the past. But as far as the outcomes of these games have been going, I've been getting the outcomes right, especially if you've been watching these GameScript shows. You've been seeing the outcomes and the projections for the game flow have been on, but as far as like when it's a 1v1 versus certain receivers or something, those have been off. As far as like what the man versus zone and the the different coverage styles of the defenses and stuff like that, the guys that are showing the best signals to have the big games have just not been having those big games. And that could be something related to the way that the wide receiver, the passing games have been down this year versus the running games. Running backs have had a lot more success recently than wide receivers. So that might have something to do with why it's been kind of a weird season. But the outcome of this game, I do think that Green Bay will win it, and I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. So just keep that in mind when you're building your lineups. The picks might not be 100%, but at least like try to build in the direction of like maybe the Green Bay Packers beating the Seahawks and the game going a little bit under. So Jordan Love, like I said, like he's got a matchup where Seattle is only giving up 16.8 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. That's a middling matchup. So Jordan Love, not necessarily a lock in tonight's slate. This could be a night where, like I fade both quarterbacks, or not fade them, but I'm not going to have a ton of two quarterback lineups, and I might have some lineups without any quarterbacks at all. Geno Smith just has not been that great this year. You look at him, he's been struggling too. He's had a couple big weeks, but for the most part, the last 4 weeks, he hasn't gotten over 17 DraftKings points. Geno Smith throwing a lot of interceptions too. That's another good one for us on our underdog pick'em. I like Geno Smith going higher than 0.5 total yards. By the way, on underdog, if you sign up for an account and use the promo code SEEK, SEEK, you're going to get a 50% deposit match up to $1,000. That is huge with playoff best ball coming around. I'm going to be starting my playoff best ball shows. I think this week I want to get another week of clarity as far as the playoff situation goes. But I've been playing those mitten contests, and you're going to want to be joining that too. These are the fun games, weekly payouts with teams advancing throughout the playoffs. You're not having to wait an entire season to get your payouts. And on top of that, you get a fun sweat throughout the playoffs, especially if you're getting in now where you're able to draft some of these teams that are on the bubble that you're getting a big value for if they get in the playoffs, like the Rams, and they got a potent offense and you're able to draft them pretty late. Just keep that in mind and make your deposit now. If you haven't signed up for an account, use the promo code SEEK, and we're going to have a lot of fun with playoff best ball this year. All right, Kenneth Walker is doubtful, like I said at the top of the show. If he's out, that's going to be huge for Charbonnet. Charbonnet had a monster week last week and looked better than Kenneth Walker's looked all season, honestly. Kenneth Walker's had a few big weeks in the beginning of the season, but tailed off since week 8. He hasn't had a week basically over 14 DraftKings points. So Charbonnet would be the beneficiary there. Had 41 DraftKings points last week. When he's been asked to fill in, he's been solid. 25 DraftKings points earlier in the year. Charbonnet is a captain option if he is the starter this week, with Green Bay giving up 23.6 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. We're going to have to keep an eye on his ownership. Don't have any ownership projections right now. It's morning of Sunday, so I haven't seen any of that stuff coming out yet. So just keep an eye on the ownership reports and stuff like that when you're building your lineups. Jaxon Smith and Njigba is, you know, Seattle, as far as Green Bay's defense, according to fantasy points, I've been using a decent amount recently. They're really good with some of these advanced metrics. As far as slot targets, Seattle's given up third most targets to slot receivers. They're giving up 36% slot target percentage. That's the third highest in the league. And the Packers are at 34.7%. So they're the fifth highest in the league. So on the surface, it looks like a good matchup for slot receivers, but the Packers are only giving up 9.9 DraftKings points a game to slot receivers, and the Seahawks are only giving up 13.9 DraftKings points a game to slot receivers. So Jaxon Smith and Njigba is in a matchup where they're only giving up under 10 DraftKings points a game to slot receivers. And we've seen Smith and Njigba have the last, about five, just been on a tear for 5 of the last 6 games. So, he's been a stud for 5 of the last 6 games, and that's going to put probably a lot of attention, a lot of ownership maybe on him. It's going to give us an opportunity for a ownership discount on DK Metcalf, who's been the opposite. He hasn't done much at all this year. Now we're talking about the Packers without Jair Alexander. That's going to set up DK Metcalf to maybe have some matchup opportunities here. And, even though Green Bay's defense has been good against the passing game, Metcalf is setting up here nicely to, maybe have a better game than he's had recently. Jayden Reed killed us last week. I had him recommended against Detroit. He had a great matchup. Detroit's been the sieve to slot receivers, and he got 1 target last week. So that was brutal. A couple weeks ago, he had 19.7 DraftKings points, and then he goes from that to having 0 DraftKings points. So that sunk a bunch of my lineups last week. This is what I'm talking about with the guys that are having the signal for the big games, and then they end up being complete busts. So Jayden Reed was a perfect example of that last week. And Seattle's given up 9.9 DraftKings points a game to the slot receivers, which, if you're thinking that, it's kind of a weird year for signals, maybe that means that Jayden Reed will have a big game this week. So just, Jayden Reed barely getting targeted on top of it. He had 6 targets last week, 3 targets a week before that, 2 targets a week before that. He's had a few with 6 targets. A lot more targets earlier in the season, though. He did have a 6-target game a couple weeks ago. So let's take a look at, let's see, Christian Watson. The Seahawks are giving up, Seahawks are giving up 18.5 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. So it's not a horrible matchup for Watson, but, Reek Woolen, I believe is the outside cornerback here. Let me take a look at the matchup that Christian Watson's going to have specifically here. So Watson lines up, pretty spread out between left side slot and right side. He's 38 in the left, 30 in slot, and 31 on the right side of the field. So, he'll be up against Josh Loeb a lot, which is a great matchup for him. Witherspoon is the slot corner. So he'll have 30% against Witherspoon. That's the one that Jayden Reed is going to be up against the most. And that's, why Seattle is one of the best teams versus the slot. And then we got Tariq Woolen, who he's 49% on the right side and 39 on the left. So, that 38 that Watson is on the left is going to correlate with the 49% that Woolen is on the right. So that's going to be his primary matchup. Doubs is expected to be back this week. So Romeo Doubs might have the better matchup this week, but he's just coming off of an injury. This is like all this stuff is playing a role in why I think this is going to be kind of an under situation. I don't know if these passing games are going to be able to get going. I could be wrong on that. Obviously, it's Sunday Night Football. They're playing in Seattle, so they're not going to have as bad weather concerns as they would in Green Bay. So, like Doubs could be in play tonight, but he's coming off that injury. He's coming off a concussion. So, we're not having to worry about his legs or anything, but a concussion for Doubs, who was dealing with some issues earlier in the season where he was missing practice and stuff like that. You never want to see that for this guy. Feel bad for Doubs and the situation he was dealing with earlier in the season. Then he gets a concussion on top of that, so that's a bad situation for Doubs there. Tucker Kraft is in a matchup where the Seahawks are giving up 12.9 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. That's a good matchup for Kraft. And he's been a decent end zone target for Jordan Reed. God, man, I get my name. Jordan Love. Looking at, let's see, 7 touchdowns already on the season. This could be a Tucker Kraft touchdown game. Wicks is going to be getting a lot less run with Doubs back. And Wicks has not really done much, regardless, when he had his opportunities with Doubs out. Myers, I like the kickers in this game. I like both kickers. I think the teams will be able to move the ball, but it's going to be dependent on if they're able to get past the defense in the red zone. But he's had a bunch of weeks over double-digit DraftKings points, and I would not be surprised to see Myers have a good game this week. McManus, same deal. A couple, decent amount of weeks over double-digit points. It might be a double kicker kind of night with these defenses playing as well as they have been. But I don't, these offenses are good enough to move the ball. Maybe they struggle in the end zone. This Hale guy, I'm not really sure why he's in the player pool here. Packers defense and Seattle defense, I think both defenses are in play as well. They've been pretty decent on top of that. See a lot of double-digit weeks from the Packers defense. Geno Smith, like I said, struggling a little bit more than he has been in that offensive line depth. Looking at the Seahawks defense, they've had a bunch of weeks with double-digit points. Defenses and kickers are definitely going to be in play. I think we're going to see, one or two of any of that combo in optimals tonight. Tyler Lockett is kind of MIA, especially since Smith and Njigba has been on his tear. But, this could be a week where, we see Lockett having a little bit better of a matchup. Get a look at his specific matchup. Tyler Lockett is 38% on the right side of the field, and that is where he's going to be up against Nixon. That's a good matchup for, let's see. Yeah, it's a below average matchup for Lockett. So that's his primary, but he also got 33% on the opposite side of the field, where he should be playing against Valentine, which is an average matchup. And then when he's in the slot for 29%, it's going to be a good matchup with that injury situation to the nickel back on the Packers here. Let me get another look at this injury situation here at the Packers. Like I said, Bullard is out, so it's likely he's going to be up against Nixon a decent amount. They're just going to be a mess kind of in this secondary, shuffling guys around. It's going to be an interesting situation with the Packers. The Packers defense with the banged up secondary this week. So, maybe a better matchup for the Seattle passing game than one would expect with the way that the Packers have been playing defense. Fant is in a good matchup, but he's another guy who hasn't done too much. He's had a few weeks over double-digit points, so maybe in a good matchup he can get us over 10 points, but he's Green Bay is allowing 14 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. So Fant is a guy that we can keep in our player pools this week. These guys, McIntosh, Brooks. What did McIntosh do last week? Okay, with Walker out, McIntosh actually had 6.5 DraftKings points. He had a couple targets and 7 rushing attempts, so he wasn't a slouch last week. And if we're looking at 3K for his salary, like he might be a decent guy to keep in our player pool. Chris Brooks has not done a whole lot, and Jacobs has just been a stud. Wilson not doing too much either. And these guys like Melton and Heath, we can keep these guys in mind for salary relief. But other than that, I don't know if I'm seeing a bunch that I like in the dumpster diving range. So let's get into this lineup build for the captain spot. I think I like Charbonnet the best in captain currently, but actually, no, let's go with Metcalf in the captain. He's pretty cheap. Metcalf in the captain. I don't think we necessarily need to put Geno Smith with him. But let's put him with him, and we don't need to have Love in there if we got him in there. Let's go with Jacobs and Charbonnet. It's going to set us up with 7,200. And then, like I said, I'm going to be looking down here at the kickers. If I have a Seattle guy in the captain, then maybe we look at Green Bay's kicker to put him in the flex there. And then we're left with options like Wilson, Melton, Heath, guys like that. If we wanted to take out McManus, maybe we go with the defense instead. Maybe we go with the Seahawks defense. It's going to leave us with 3K. McIntosh, who I just spoke about, McIntosh being in there with Charbonnet might justify why Charbonnet is not getting enough points to get into that captain spot. If we wanted to take out that Seahawks D, maybe we want to go with Lockett since we got Geno in there. Let's give him a double stack there. Same situation. Let's see. Kraft is expensive. Kraft is 5,800. If we put him in there, then we're left with like Wilson, Melton, Bobo. Bobo's a guy that's had some games in the past. He hasn't done too much recently, but with the wide receivers healthy, he's not the best option for us. But Melton and Heath would probably be better options to turn to. So let's clear that out. Let's go with Charbonnet. If I go with Charbonnet, I'm going to just skip the quarterbacks in this one, see where it gets us. I like Metcalf. And let's put Doubs. Let's hold off on Doubs. Let's put Kraft in here. And I like this to be, kind of a kickers and defense type of game. So let's get McManus in there. You could go Myers too if you wanted to double kicker on this one. We got Wicks as an option. We got both defenses. We got Lockett. I like this direction a lot more. I'm not going to force in like quarterbacks, like I said earlier. I just don't think it's necessary. But probably one or none for me for quarterbacks tonight. But if you guys think it's going to be playing more towards the over, then by all means try to get both quarterbacks in there. That's just the direction I'm probably going to be going tonight. If it's a low scoring game, maybe these defenses are really good. Let's put someone different. Let's put Myers in the captain. This will be completely off the board. That'll get us ability to get Jacobs, Charbonnet. Let's stick with Metcalf. Then let's get a defense in there because we want to make sure that we can justify like some of the scoring of actual touchdowns not being so much. Maybe they're not scoring actual touchdowns. They're just racking up, more PPR and those types of points. Where's Doubs at? Let's get Doubs in there. 6,800 leaves us open to put in, any one of these kickers or any one of these defenses or Kraft or, like if I got a kicker in the if I got a kicker in the captain, then I probably want a defense because if it's going to be a low scoring game, then the defenses are going to be in play. So this will leave a bunch of salary on the table on top of it. So we could put in the Packers. Now let's put in the Seahawks defense. Let's say we want to swap out Doubs for, you could swap out Doubs for Smith and Njigba or something like that, and just hope that they get more PPR points. Reed, you'd have the option. Remember what I said about the slot receivers in these matchups. Not really sure I want to go high on the slot receivers. But even with a kicker and the captain, it's not leaving us with a whole lot of room to play with here. Let's put Love in the lineup here. Leaves us 3,200. Puts us in that Macintosh range. If we went with Geno Smith, then a low volume guy like Fant could be relevant in this one if he catches like a touchdown in this one. So, there's plenty of ways to go in that direction. I don't really like that. I like the Charbonnet direction the most. I think that makes the most sense. Let's put one more with Jacobs in the captain. These guys are going to be like heavily owned, so you're going to want to try to get different elsewhere in your lineups. Let's get Charbonnet, Metcalf. You can see I'm leaning on these guys like Metcalf tonight, pretty heavy. So let's go with Myers in this one. Going to leave us with 5,100 per guy. Got Charbonnet, got Jacobs, got Myers. We could try to put Doubs in. We could try to put Doubs in this one. This is with 3,700. We got Fant in that option too. Or we could go with a defense. Let's go with the Packers D since we got Jacobs in that captain spot. Leaves us with 5,700. We could get Wicks in there if we wanted to. If we wanted to get one of those receivers in. And then we got, double kicker potential with McManus. You get Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett would probably be the guy that I would put in, Lockett or Fant. So that's enough for this week. Make sure to hit that like button. Give me the 30 likes. I'll put my favorite plays in the comments when we hit that later on so I can give you guys an idea of my favorite plays once we get a little bit more information in. And we're looking at Kenneth Walker's status. We're looking at the ownership updates and stuff like that. And make sure to hit subscribe. I'm looking for 1,400 subscribers. I need about 80 left to get there. And check out the Underdog Pick'ems. If you haven't made your deposit on Underdog, do so and get that free money. It's $1,000 deposit match, up to 50% of your deposit. And if you can get yourself a free $1,000 heading into playoff best ball, that's a good spot to be in. You don't have to play all your money like on playoff best ball because we got best ball is going to be coming earlier than ever next year. So we'll probably have best ball lineups starting as soon as the Super Bowls are over. So you'll have some money in there to start playing best ball as well. And that's it for this week, guys. I will see you later on with an Underdog video.